Monica Wood is a novelist, a memorist, a playwright, an avid reader, a bird watcher, a lover of music who occasionally sits in with her brother's country and western band. Her novels are well known to all of us here tonight: When We Were the Kennedys, a memoir from Mexico, Maine, a New England bestseller, and Oprah Magazine selection. Another, Any Bitter Thing, a national bestseller and BookSense top 10 pick. Her other publications include Ernie's Ark and My Only Story, a finalist for the Kate Chopin Award. Her writing has appeared in O, the New York Times, Martha Stewart Living, Parade, and many other publications. Monica's most recently published work is The One in a Million Boy, a novel that Christina Baker Klein, author of Orphan Train, described as, I quote, a magical, beautifully written story about the healing power of friendship, music, and unexpected generation-spanning connections. On her website, Monica offers the following advice. She says, the best advice I have for aspiring writers is to read, read, read. Read, everybody. You're bound to find that one writer who seems to write only for you, and it will be an exhilarating, life-changing discovery. End of quote. For many book lovers, Monica Wood is that one writer. So please join me in welcoming Monica Wood.
Hi, everybody. Is this mic okay? Yeah. It sounds sort of funny to me, but okay, so I really didn't want to come tonight because after 7 catless months, I got a cat yesterday, and I really wanted to stay home with her because she thinks my husband is an axe murderer. But I think she'll adjust eventually. Her name is Susie. The axe murderer named her Susie. Okay, so The One in a Million Boy is my new novel. It just came out in paperback last week. It has done very well for me, and I'll tell you the story about how it came to be in a minute. It really is an interesting story about failure. But first, I think I would like to introduce you to the 3 main characters by reading a couple of excerpts. How many people have read the novel already? Oh my goodness, bless your hearts. Thank you. Well, for those of you who have not, it is the story of a friendship between a 104-year-old Lithuanian immigrant woman named Ona Vitkus and an 11-year-old Boy Scout who is coming to her house every Saturday morning to do her yard chores in order to fulfill the requirements for a Boy Scout badge in community service. Now, and the other thing about this boy is he's completely obsessed with the Guinness Book of Records, and when he discovers the ancient age of his new friend, he decides that she would certainly be old enough to get some kind of a record, and so they decide to go for oldest licensed driver. But first she has to get her license back, which was taken away by, quote, the 12-year-old tester who flunked her when she was 100. So that forms a little part of the book. Now, before the story opens, on page 2, the reader discovers that the boy has recently died of a 1 in a million heart ailment. And in his place, on a Saturday morning, arrives Quinn Porter, who is the boy's father. Quinn is a guitarist, and he is riddled with all kinds of fatherly guilt over having been not a deadbeat dad, but certainly an absent dad to this strange little boy that he never really quite connected with. And he has been guilted into completing this assignment by Belle, his twice ex-wife, who is the boy's grieving mother. So even though the boy is gone before the story even opens, he really is the main character in the story. Those of you who have read it know that he kind of hovers around the edges of every single scene. And we also meet him in 3 different ways. One way is through flashback scenes, and I'm going to read one of those to you. The other way is, because he's obsessed with the Guinness Book of Records, he writes lists. He's a counter. He counts everything by 10. And what he does is he goes through all of the Guinness records, and believe me, they are you cannot make this stuff up. And what he does is he puts them into categories of his own. So the category might be family, and he has things under there like largest turkey farm or biggest gathering of clowns in one place, which was 10,000 in Great Britain. The weirdest ones come from Great Britain for some reason. Although there's some doozies in America too. The eyeball popper is from America. Her name is Kim Goodman, and she can pop her eyeballs out of her head a half an inch. And there's a picture of it if you care to look it up. So this is Ona and Quinn and the boy. So what happens is that Quinn and Ona, that friendship then begins to develop, and the plot of the story kind of goes from there. So that even though the boy is gone, he is the one who kind of engineers all of these things that happen in the book. And even though there are a lot of events in the book, there's a road trip, there's a long lost son, there's all kinds of things that happen, I think of this book really as a book about the saving graces of friendship. And one of the other ways we meet this child is through a series of recordings he has done with his friend Ona for a school project. And through those recordings, the reader comes to see that they had a real friendship, and that this woman has told this boy secrets she has never told another living soul in her very long life. So I think what I'd like to do is, I'm going to begin, I think, with it's a scene I really like, so I'm going to read it. This is one of the flashback scenes, and you're going to meet Quinn and the little boy. And Quinn, as I said, is a guitar player. He's on the road a lot. And in this excerpt, Quinn has just remarried Belle for the second time. And she has engineered a bonding session between their son and Quinn in the form of guitar lessons, which take place in her garage, which Quinn is hoping to turn into a viable recording studio. So this is the compromise he has struck with her, that he will continue his music career, but remain closer to home. So in this scene, the boy's obsession with Guinness records becomes abundantly clear. For lesson 6, Quinn once again invited the boy into the heated comfort of Belle's roomy garage, currently cleared out for renovation. He arranged 2 facing chairs and neatened up a short, thoughtfully chosen stack of CDs. "The longest distance marched by a marching band," said the boy, "was 46.7 miles. Quinn plugged in 2 guitars. Belle jaunted in, left snacks, patted them both on the head, and retreated. The boy took a single Oreo off a plate, a single parsimonious sip of ginger ale. "They marched from the town of Assen, country of Netherlands," he said, "to the town of Marum, country of Netherlands, on May 9, 1992. Quinn presumed there was a manner in which one answered such conversational gambits. It's just that he could never think of one. "It took 13 hours and 50 minutes, the boy said. 60 marchers started and 52 marchers finished. "The renovation was your mother's idea," Quinn told the boy. "We'll bump out that wall, replace the doors, and rent out rehearsal space." He smiled zealously. "Plus recording services." He said "we" to include the boy, to whom he'd already demonstrated his newly acquired setup. What boy didn't love machines? But so far the boy had bared not a jot of interest. "I'll be the session player by day," Quinn said, patting the guitar in his lap, "and keep the home fires burning at night." In response to the boy's stillness, he added, "Do you know what compromise means?" After another moment of solemn consideration, the boy said, "I don't think that will work." What he meant was anyone's guess, so Quinn asked him to imagine the control booth beyond the wall, a floating mic above his head, an open appointment book crammed with names, a humming empire that the boy, who had difficulty with spatial perception, could not envision. "Never mind," Quinn said. "You'll see it for real soon enough. Did you listen to the songs I gave you?" "Yes." 3 times, like I asked. "Plus 7 more times, 10 times. The boy looked terrified. "This isn't a test. Try to relax. What did you think?" The songs have too many notes. A terrible, unwanted thought crashed through the ceiling of Quinn's meticulously constructed caution, and not for the first time. This child couldn't be his. He just couldn't. They were supposed to inspire you, Quinn said. Physically, the boy was all Belle, all open-faced, belly-up innocence. The part that wasn't Belle, the part that resembled a secretive, burrow-dwelling animal, reminded him of his own father, who rarely spoke except to deliver pronouncements. "Okay," the boy said, seeming to absorb Quinn's every unfatherly thought. How could he know? He did, though. Quinn felt cornered, caught, made to pay for his 5-year absence. But he decided to take what was coming to him, not just now, but forever. The boy had put on his scout uniform for the lesson, the logic of which surpassed Quinn's powers of deduction. Quinn regarded the costume's precise creases and attendant frippery, patches for everything except music. He placed a guitar, a Les Paul Jr. knockoff Belle had bought on sale, into the boy's arms and led him through a profoundly unsuccessful scale. "Don't think," he said. "Feel." "Feel what?" said the boy. "Crying won't bring your mother back," his father had once said. "Now let's get these things into the truck." "Maybe 10 times is too many times," the boy suggested. In his arms, the guitar looked radioactive. Quinn wondered if it was possible for a human being to actually dislike music. "Here," he said, arranging the boy's fingers into a first position G. "We're going to try the 1-4-5 progression from last week, just to remind you what it sounds like. Then we'll review the other scale I taught you. Remember the blues box?" The boy's mouth made a perceptible downturn. "Okay then, great. By the time you get back to school on Monday, you'll have girls lining up to carry your books." "I don't know any girls." "You will if you play the blues." "You said this was rock." Quinn let out his breath, long and silent. "What is the foundation of rock and roll, the heart and core of all modern popular music?" "Blues," the boy recited glumly. "And what is the best blues solo ever produced by a non-black guy ever?" Quinn was getting heated up now and tried to hide it. "Sleepy Time Time by Eric Chapman." Eric Chapman was Belle's across-the-street neighbor who washed his car every day and dried it with a leaf blower. Eric Chapman had once informed Quinn from the wide-bottom seat of his lawnmower that a man without a man's job had no business procreating. "Clapton," Quinn said to his son for the 50th time. "Eric Clapton. Clapton, Clapton, Clapton." He removed the guitar from the boy's narrow lap and laid it on the floor. "How about if we just listen?" "I can listen," said the boy, apparently relieved to be divested of the guitar's metaphorical weight. Quinn was aware of the father-son dance he was conducting, but helpless to improve his footwork. "Just relax your ears," he said, cueing the music. He turned the balance all the way to the right. Clapton's notes rang through one speaker with the rhythm pulled into the background. The boy's huge, moon-like eyes took in either everything or nothing. Who could tell? As the song engaged its reliable momentum, Quinn anticipated the arrival of Clapton's virtuosity for the first time in his life with dread. His head throbbed. "You hear the solo coming in now?" he said, trying mightily to feel some other way than the way he felt. "Listen to that call and response." He shook his head in wonderment, as he always did, but it felt, again for the first time, like a learned gesture, and he was beginning to blame the boy for ruining one of his most trustworthy sources of bliss. "It's a conversation he's having with himself. You hear that? It's like something rising out of the goddamn sea. Just listen." "You sound just like the record, honey," his mother had once marveled, standing at his bedroom door. One lasting memory, her gaunt fingers tapping on the door jamb, keeping time, her fingernails yellowing with illness. His mother, who loved music, any music, but especially his. The boy turned his head at long last toward the speakers as the room filled with melodious joy. He appeared to be in physical pain, panting through parted teeth. Quinn stared into the ancient country of his son's unmoving eyes. Wrong song, wrong band, he realized. There was too much to hear, too many twining treasures, especially for a boy who didn't tap his feet or bob his head or otherwise betray the remotest affinity for musical rapture. Try to receive it, Quinn said now, referring to the sublime phrasing of Eric Clapton, Clapton, Clapton. You hear the notes he's not playing? You hear that building pressure, building, 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 and then whammo, he's off to some spectacular place, but you hear the notes he left unplayed? He's hit stop. Those are ghost notes, he said. You hear them, but they aren't there. It should take your breath away. Okay, the boy said. I don't expect you to play this way. You understand that, right? Okay. This is about appreciating. It begins with appreciating. Okay. Rooted to the chair, the boy assumed the motionless carriage of a felon awaiting sentencing. Relax, my friend. It's only rock and roll. You said blues. The boy's lip quivered. I did, Quinn admitted. I did say that. The boy recovered himself. Maybe he was tougher than he looked. Quinn picked up his own guitar and reproduced the solo in slow motion, note for note. What does their father's hell mean? The boy asked. Their father's hell did slowly go by. This was from Teach Your Children, a song they'd given up on 3 weeks ago. I don't know, Quinn said. You have to be a poet to know. I'm not a poet, the boy said. Are you? Maybe we should wrap this up. The boy rose ceremonially to his feet. I believe, he said dolefully, that would be for the best. He picked up the cookie plate and glasses and headed for the breezeway door, where he turned around briefly. 1, the marching band from the country of Netherlands was called Marum, the same name as the town they marched to. 2, the world's largest playable electric guitar is 43 feet and 7.5 inches tall. 3, you play 10 times more excellent than Eric Chapman. Quinn nodded. That's true, he said, thinking of psychotic, lard-ass Eric Chapman and his riding mower. I'd blow Eric Chapman's doors. He watched the boy disappear into the house, then played the famous solo again, grabbing all the notes, but missing everything that composed its ferocious radiance. Clapton's tone, his phrasing, his inborn musical heartbeat. And it pained him to do this. It always had. And yet he loved this solo so much. The motion it accumulated, the comfort it offered, the place it visited, the story it made. He loved these things so much that he could not refrain from trying to enter that story, and he could not refrain from failing again and again and again. So that's Quinn and his son. And I'm also going to introduce you to Ona, who's kind of a ticket. Remember, she's 104. And this is from the very beginning of the book. So this is the first time Quinn and Ona meet. And it doesn't go that well. She was waiting for him or someone, though he had not phoned ahead. Where's the boy? She called from her porch. Couldn't make it, he said. You Mrs. Vitkus? He'd come to fill her bird feeders and put out her trash and tender 60 minutes to the care of her property. He could do at least that. She regarded him peevishly, her face a collapsed apple, drained of color but for the small, unsettling seed-bright eyes. My birds went hungry, she said. I can't manage the ladder. Her voice suggested mashed glass. Mrs. Ona Vitkus, 42 Sibley Avenue? He checked the address again. He'd taken 2 buses across town to get here. It's Miss, she said haughtily. He caught the faintest trace of an accent. She'd probably staggered through Ellis Island with the huddled masses. He didn't come last week either. These boys don't stick to things. I can't help that, Quinn said, suddenly wary. He'd been led to expect a pink-cheeked charmer. The house resembled a witch's hovel with its dreary flower beds and sharply pitched dormers and shingles the color of thatch. They're supposed to be teaching these boys about obedience, prepared and kind and obedient, and she rapped herself lightly on the forehead. Clean, Quinn offered. The boy was gone, clean gone, but Quinn couldn't bring himself to say it. Clean and reverent, that's what they promise. They pledge. I thought this one was the real McCoy. I'm his father. I figured. She shifted inside her quilted parka. She also wore a hat with pom-poms, though it was 55 degrees, late May, the sun beating down. Is he sick? No. Where's the birdseed? Out back in the shed, next to the door, unless the boy moved it. He gets his little notions. There's a ladder there. You're tall, you might not need it. If I lowered the feeders, he suggested, you could fill them yourself. She dug her fists into her hips. I'm quite put out about this, she said. All at once she sounded near tears, an unexpected key change that sped things up on Quinn's end. Let me get to it. I'll be inside. She aimed a knuckly finger toward her door. I can supervise just as well through the window. She spoke with a zeal at odds with her physical frailty, and Quinn doubted for the first time Belle's word that Ona Vitkus was 104 years old. Since the boy's death, Belle's view of reality had gone somewhat gluey. Quinn was awed by her grief, cowed by its power to alter her. He wanted to save her, but had no talent for anything more interpersonally complicated than to obey commands as a form of atonement, which was how he'd wound up here, under orders from his twice ex-wife to complete their son's good deed. After dispatching the feeders and running a push mower over the lawn, Quinn returned to the house, where Miss Vitkus stood at the door. No hair to speak of, just a few whitish hanks that put him in mind of dandelions. She said, I give him cookies after. No thanks. It's part of the duty. He expected cats and doilies, but Miss Vitkus's house was pleasant and airy. Her kitchen table had been whisked clean, but for 2 mismatched plates, a box of animal crackers, a deck of cards, and a pair of ugly drugstore reading glasses. The chairs smelled of lemon polish. He could see how the boy might have liked it here. I heard you're 104, Quinn ventured, mostly to fill up space. Plus 133 days, she said. She divided the animal crackers, 1 to each plate, over and over, like dealing cards. Apparently, there would be no milk. I'm 42. That's 84 in musician years. Well, you look older. Her greenish eyes glimmered over him. The boy had written in his faultless spelling, Miss Vitkus is extremely inspiring in her magic powers and amazing life events. Do you have help, Quinn asked, besides scouts? I get Meals on Wheels. She held up a cookie dinosaur. This is their idea of dessert. She looked him over again. Your boy told me you're famous, are you? He laughed. In my dreams. What style of music do you play? Anything except jazz. Jazz you have to be born with. Elvis? Sure. Cowboy songs? If you ask me nice. I always liked Gene Autry. Perry Como? Perry Como or Gene Autry or Led Zeppelin or a cat food commercial, as long as you pay me. Well, I've never heard of Ed Zeppelin, but I've seen my share of cat food commercials. So, a jack of all trades. A journeyman. That's how you stay working. She considered him anew. You must be quite talented then. I'm okay. What had the boy told her? He felt like a bug on a pin. All at once she glared at him. These boys don't stick to anything. We had ongoing business. I guess I should go. Suit yourself. She drummed her fingers on the well-used cards, which looked a little smaller than regulation. My son says you do tricks, he said, unable to resist. Not for free, I don't. You charge him? Not him, he's a child. She slipped the glasses on. They were too big for her face, and inspected the deck. The boy had written, Miss Vitkus is extremely talented. She makes cards and quarters disappear. Then they appear again. She smiles well. This was exactly the way he had talked in real life. Quinn said, "How much?" She shuffled her cards, her mood changing. "I shall regale you," she said, a magician's misdirection. Quinn had run into all manner of flim-flammery over the years, and this old bird was a champ. "Just the trick would be fine," he said, glancing at her kitchen clock. "You're in a hurry. Everybody's in a hurry." She was accordioning the cards now, hand to hand, less impressively than she seemed to think, but impressive enough. "I ran off with a Midway show in the summer of 1914 and learned the art of prestidigitation." Her eyes lifted, as if the word itself produced magic. Reddening, she added, "I told your boy a lot of stories. Too many, possibly." He'd been right to fear coming here. The boy was everywhere. Quinn had never wanted children, had been an awkward, largely absent father, and now, in the wake of the boy's death, he was left with neither the ice-smooth paralysis of shock nor the crystalline focus of grief, but rather with a heart-swelling package of murky and miserable ironies. Miss Vitkus fanned the cards and waited. $5, Quinn said, taking out his wallet. "You read my mind." She took the bill and stowed it in her sweater. After a moment, Quinn said, "Where's the trick?" She leaned across the table and gathered up the cards. 5 gets you inside the tent. He saw what was in her eyes now, anger. 5 more, you get the show. "That's extortion." "I wasn't born yesterday," she said. "Next time, bring the boy." So that's the first meeting with owner. So I'm going to tell you a little story about failure. I started writing this book in 2004, right after my novel Any Bitter Thing went out into the world. And I worked on it for 4 years, and I delivered it in November of 2008 to my agent. And I had a publisher who had done my last 5 books, and I fully expected that this one would just sail through with no problem, and it did not. You might remember that in November of 2008, the economy completely collapsed, and they decided to pass on the manuscript. And I was really, to say I was disappointed is an understatement. And I was just, it just took me a while to lick my wounds. I put the novel aside. It felt like my failed work. And in the meantime, because I wanted to keep writing something, I started writing about home because it felt like a comfort to me to write about home. And that became a memoir called When We Were the Kennedys, which never would have been written if this book had come out when I wanted it to. Now, I should add that the publisher, they had all of my paperbacks, and my hardcover publisher had just let go its entire fiction line. So the paperback publisher had been wooing me for 2 years. They sent me birthday cards. They said they couldn't wait to acquire me as a hardcover publisher. And then, boom, I was out like an old shoe. And the last tour they sent me on was this fancy cross-country tour. And the one thing I remember about that tour is the Aqua Hotel in San Francisco. I'm sure no one here has ever been there because it must cost $1 zillion a night. And I got there and I looked at this room in this hotel and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had been met at the airport by a media escort. It's somebody who takes you around to where you're supposed to be for readings and radio interviews and things like that. And she called upstairs to get me, and I said, "Susan, you have got to come up and see this room. It is unbelievable." And I am not kidding when I say I could almost fit my house in the bathroom of this room. So that's what I remember about that tour. It was pretty amazing, and the kind that makes you feel really, really special. And then a few years later, they say, "Oh, no, we're kind of tired of you. Forget it. We are out." So it was a really kind of disappointing time, but the memoir came out of that, and it never would have happened otherwise. And then I had promised my husband that if I finished the memoir and it got published, which I never thought it would, I would go back to the novel, because he really wanted that novel to be out there. He really liked it, and he wanted to talk about it with somebody, but he was the only one who had read it besides my sister. And he said, okay, so that's fine, you do this first, then you're gonna get back to the novel, right? I said, oh yeah, sure, I'll be right there. So it got out into the world, and he said, okay, it's time, and I still just wasn't ready. And I said, you know, I've always wanted to write a play, and there was something about being kind of freed from the novelist track that was really kind of liberating. You know, I had just done something in a completely different genre, and I really enjoyed the writing of it because there were so many narrative problems that I had to solve that weren't like any other narrative problems I had solved before, because this was nonfiction, not fiction. So it was a really, really enjoyable book to write. And it came out and everything, and I said, oh boy, okay, well, I still can't do this. I can't even read it. The book just feels like poison to me. It's just a pile of pages. I haven't looked at it in, really, I hadn't looked at it in 5 years. And I said, I can't read it. He said, fine, I will read it to you. So he spent the next several nights reading my manuscript to me. And at the end of it, I thought, you know, this isn't really a bad story. It's not nearly as horrible as I thought it was. But there was still some work I wanted to do. I wanted to do some work on the character of Quinn. The original Quinn was far more, he wasn't as successful a musician. He was much more of kind of a hapless, he just kind of drifted around with things kind of happening to him. And so I kind of made him more of an agent of his own change. Like he makes his own decisions. He decides he has this major atonement that he has to accomplish, and it drives him through the novel. And that's something that didn't exist and wouldn't have existed if the Aqua Hotel people had not dumped me. So it all worked out really well. And by that time I had another publisher, because the Aqua Hotel people also rejected the memoir, which then landed with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and they've been wonderful. I really like that publisher a lot, partly because they have editorial offices in New York and in Boston. In fact, I'm going tomorrow to visit my editor, Deanne Ermey, who's a wonderful editor, and we're around the same age. We're both experienced, older women who get the publishing industry. We've been here a long time. There's no surprises, and it was just a pleasure, not to have an editor who was 15, but also to have an editor who's in Boston. So we actually, and this is so unusual for these days, I went down to Boston and we had paper manuscripts that we were going through. Like this word or that word, what do you think of this? Should this come out, should that stay? It was so, we had our laptops there as well, but we did the editing together with paper, which is such a throwback and never ever happened. So that was a pure joy. Again, never would have happened if everything had happened the way I wanted it to. So this failure, which was a failure and felt like a failure, was just in the moment. Failure is something that happens in the moment, and there's always something that's going to happen after failure. Sometimes it's another failure, but then after that there's something else. And when I think about it, this novel thematically is kind of like that. It's about, I call it my coming of old age novel. Here's this woman who's 104 years old, and she gets another life in a way, through these circumstances that she never could have foreseen in a million years. There are just so many things that, the older we get, we just have so much, we've lived so much more, but we also have so much more to live no matter how old we are. One of the inspirations for the character of Ona actually is my friend Mary Berry, who I met when she was 87 years old. I was teaching at Colby College for a year as a visiting writer, and I rented a room on the second floor of this rambling house that she had all by herself. And so I'd be up there 3 days a week for my classes, and we got to be very, very good friends. I still watch Dancing with the Stars. It's really kind of a terrible show, but I watch it because it reminds, we used to watch it together, and she had a big crush on the old crabby judge, Len, what's his name? And she would tell me, oh, he was such a dancer in his day, and it was just, so I still watch it just because it brings her back to me. But she died when she was 98, still in possession of a valid driver's license, I must say. And I was with her on the day she died. And I didn't meet her until she was 87. And it was a friendship that meant so much to me. And you know, it wasn't just, it was definitely a two-way street. It was very much a two-way friendship. And it made me think that, you know, when my time comes, whenever that may be, the person that is going to be with me, I might not have met yet. That person might not have been born yet. And so it just, you know, how no matter how old we are, there are these surprises that can happen. And sometimes they're doozies. Sometimes they're things you never imagined could ever befall your life. And you learn things from those things too. And you somehow come back whole, and then there's something else around the next bend. It's just life is an amazing thing. And I think of this novel as a demonstration of that's what happens to these characters. You know, you have a guy in middle age who is, you know, at a very, very low point in his life, and it doesn't look like there's much coming, and this whole thing happens. And then you have this 104-year-old woman, same thing. She thinks she's done with people, and she's just getting started. So I like to think she'd be 117 right now. And there was a 117-year-old woman in Italy who just died. And Madame Jeanne-Marie Calment, who holds the all-time record, was 122 and 164 days. So that's kind of a ludicrous record, but you never know. Ona could be gunning for that one as we speak. So one of the things, you know, they say there's no revenge like success. So I'm hoping the Aqua Hotel people are very, very sorry they passed on this book. Because so far we now have 20 foreign editions of this book. It's been translated into 19 languages. And this has never happened to any of my other books. This is by far my most successful book in that sense. I've had one translation, and my second novel had an Italian translation, but otherwise nothing. I've always been told I'm far too American, a novelist, that I have too American a sensibility and that the Europeans just don't get me. And that's all fine and good. You know, I am American. Why would I not have an American sensibility? But there was something about this story that just caught fire. And my theory, honestly, I don't really know, but my theory is that the protagonist is so old, and there is something about great age in other cultures that is very different from here. Here we are terrified of age, just terrified of it. And we do everything we can, like we Botox our faces, we do everything we can to pretend that it's not happening. And you know, it doesn't matter what we do. Every single one of us will be one day older tomorrow than we are today. That's just the way it goes, and you can't change that. And there is something about other cultures who embrace that, and they go to their elders for advice and wisdom. And it is true that wisdom does come with age. I feel like I'm 63, I turned 63, and I feel like, you know, if I wanted to be an ice skater, I would have been washed up 40 years ago. But I'm a writer, and time is on my side. I can only get better. As long as I keep my wits about me, I can only get better as a writer. So it's a profession that is where age is on your side, time is on your side. So there is something very gratifying to me that this book with this ancient protagonist caught the attention of so many people in so many countries. So I'm starting to get the books now, because it's been a year since the hardcover came out. So the foreign editions are beginning to come out, and so my agent always sends me, you know, a little pile of books I can't read. So the first one that came was from Korea, and I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't have a copy of the red cover that we had, but that was this. But this couldn't be more different from the cover. Isn't it pretty? I hope you can see it in the back, but it's very, there's the red one there. It's very Korean. You know, it looks quiet and, yeah, no. Right. So can you hold that one up? That's the original hardcover. So it's kind of whimsical, it was red. I never really loved it, but a lot of other people really did, and it wasn't my idea. And the title isn't even mine, but I completely bowed to sales and marketing this time around. I said, you can put a dancing bear on that cover and call it Buy My Book. That's fine. So anyway, before the Korean edition came out, and this is what really just killed me, I got an email, And getting the email was a trip because there's all of these censors in South Korea even. And so we had to kind of be routed through all these things. So I finally hear from this person, and the letter says, "Dear Monica Wood, hello, sir. I am Sun Hee Moon, in charge of publishing your novel. I'm honored to publish your writings on behalf, blah, blah, blah. We do our best on translation, design, marketing, and so on to introduce your good writings to Korea. But then a good idea flashed into our mind that what if we ask you to write a preface to the book as the Korean version? We hope the book will provide special contents as you will make your first appearance to Korean readers. We are fully sure that your writings will be loved by Korean readers because many parts of your writings correspond to the national sentiments of Koreans." I'm thinking, well, who knew? So I got this lovely letter, and my first reaction was, "Dear Lord, please don't be the translator." And then my second reaction was, this is kind of amazing that a culture that could not be more different from ours, and I think it's because it's about family relationships. You know, I mean, my whole body of work is about assembling families out of broken parts. And I think, you know, whether you're Korean or Brazilian or Finnish or American, we all come from families and we drag them through life with us whether we want to or not. And that is definitely a universal feeling. So that was Korea. And then most of the foreigners used some version of the red cover. This is funny. You find out funny little styles, like all the Romance language countries. They all have these little funny things, and I think it means it's a hardcover, even though it's not a hardcover. It's paper. But this, I don't know really what it means, but they don't do hardcover, so I think this is their version of it. And then when you have the paperback, because it does have a paperback coming out too, I think it's a smaller format is what they do. So this is the Spanish. Un entro un millón, so 1 in a million. Nobody translated it as the 1 in a million boy. It just didn't work. 1 in a million didn't work as a modifier for some reason. It just did not translate to any language so far that has done this. The Koreans, by the way, I asked some kids to translate it for me, and the Koreans, it says, the only boy in the world is what it's called. And so in Korean, if you say to somebody, "You're the only reader in the world," it means you're special. You're a special reader. It doesn't mean literally you're the only one, but it feels like you're the only one. So I thought that was pretty sweet. And then the Germans, they have a smaller format, and they used exactly the same cover as the American cover. And they went all poetic with the title. And I would think the Germans of all people would have just translated exactly the way it was. This is called Bevor die Welt erwacht, which means before the world awoke. Wow. I know. But the weird thing about this is one of my early titles for this book was The Wakening World. Because that's the last 3 words of the book. And I thought, oh my God, who knew I'm telepathic with the Germans, you know? My brother would be horrified if he found out we weren't Irish, but rather German. But it sort of feels like I have this simpatico with the German people, because they were the ones who went all literary with the title, because I was told we had to go all commercial with the title. So I was very pleased with that. So they kept the cover, but they changed the title. And then we get the Italians. I hope everybody's going to be able to see this, because it is a doozy. This is, my sister Kathy says, this is proof positive that the Italians have far too much time on their hands. There is a flying whale. Can you see that in the back? There's a flying whale towing a toy airplane with a little person in it over the clouds. And the title translates as Little Surprises on the Road to Happiness. And in answer to your next question, I don't have a clue. But the Italians, bless their hearts, were all excited about this book. And one of the things they did was they created a Facebook page for Ona Vitkus, as if she were real. So they had this 104-year-old woman named Ona Vitkus goes on Facebook, does a page, starts posting things, and all of the things are, they hired a writer to do it, and the writer actually did a very good job. They were nicely written, and there was nothing outside of the story. I was a little worried about that. And I told them I agreed to it as long as it wouldn't appear in English anywhere. So she starts posting these things for about 3 months. And about 6 or 8 weeks into it, I got kind of curious about it. I said, I'm going to go find this. So I went and Googled all over the place. I found this on Italian Facebook. And Ona Vitkus had 10,000 followers. And she's giving advice to young people and talking about the war and all of these things and this friend she has. And I thought, oh my gosh, what? And so the weekend before it came out in Italy, she revealed herself and said, oh, my dear friends, you know, caro, this or that. I have a little confession to make to you. I made a fib, and I hope you will forgive me, but I live in a novel by an American novelist named Monica Wood, but I feel real, and da-da-da-da. I'm thinking, there is going to be rioting in the streets from 10,000 people who think this dear old lady has been giving them life advice. And so every time she posts something, there's like a gazillion responses. So I just gritted my teeth, and I went in and looked. It's like, no, we still love you. I don't care that you're not real. You've helped me so much. And it was just the most bizarre publication thing that has ever happened to me. But it's doing really well in Italy, so there you go. So then, the one foreign edition I was really excited about was France, because I can read French, and I really wanted a chance to expand my vocabulary by reading something that I already knew all the words to. So I get this note from the French publisher. Dear Monica, today's the day, and petite surprise sur le chemin du bonheur, which means little surprises on the road to happiness. I'm thinking, has hit French bookshelves. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. I hope you have received your copies. The beautiful cover that your Italian publisher was so kind as to let us use. So there it is in French. It's a baleine and a little airplane and the same thing and the same title and even the same little thingy bob. Oh my goodness. So anyway, there you are. It makes no more sense in French than it does in Italian. And then the other thing that is kind of interesting, again with styles, everything from the Eastern European countries. Remember the old Nancy Drew books where they printed the cover on and it's hardcover, but there's no dust jacket. So this is the Lithuanian version, which I think is very sweet. I really like it. And I was also quite tickled to get a Lithuanian translation since Ona is Lithuanian. And I use a lot of Lithuanian words in the book, so I immediately went through, and it took a while to find them, to see how they handled the ones that I used. And I was just hoping they would be spelled exactly the same way and that I didn't make a mistake. And it turned out they were all correct. I had good sources, but... and this is called Neprapastas Paprastas Jevenimas. And it translates as the Dutch title. And how they saw it, I don't know. The Dutch title, I can't say it, but it sounds like Gahoon Galoon Gadoon Gawoon. And it translates as an extraordinary, ordinary life. So it has that, so Nepaprastas. And so when I saw this, I'm thinking, Nepaprastas, Paprastas. And so I Google translated, and that's what it says, an extraordinary, ordinary life. How they saw it or got it, I just have no idea, but it was very interesting to me. So then the one I got most recently, this is the last one, is also from the Eastern, so it's that hard thing. And this one is by Monika Wudova. It's Slovakia. And it should have been called Little Surprises on the Road to Happiness, because behold the flying whale. There it is again. Except this flying whale this is like circa 1960s Soviet gulag. It's just it looks like some dystopian novel about prisoners. It's just so bizarre. I just have no idea. So there it is anyway. If the whale's going the other way, that's the only change. And then there's this polluted sepia-colored cityscape. So that's Slovakia. And I can't read a word of it, so yeah. Anyway. Oh, the title is 1 in a Million.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what most of them did. I can't remember if there were any other changed titles. I don't think so. It was either 1 in a Million or some poetic thing like the Germans or some crazy thing like the Italians. So if anybody has a question or would like to say something, I'd be delighted to answer anything you'd like. Yes?
I'm just curious why you didn't name the boy.
Oh, why I did not name the boy. People have asked that, and I feel bad because a lot of people go back through thinking they must have missed his name somewhere along the line. He does have a name, but you'll have to boil me in oil to make me reveal it, because I don't think anyone should know his name. He had several names, nothing really quite fit. And after a while, I realized that the reason he was nameless is that once I named him, it was like pinning a butterfly to a square of velvet. It just didn't feel right. He's ethereal. He's not real anymore. You know, he's not mortal anymore. And so it just felt like to name him just felt wrong. And so it's funny. I went through several drafts before I realized he was just going to have to remain nameless. Thank you. Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
I had a question that goes back to the introduction, that it was read, 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 and you will finally find the author that is writing just for you.
Yes.
Who's that?
Oh, the writing. Oh, that's nice. I have so many. I read a lot. Gosh, who do I really love? It was the question was, I say, read, read, read. You'll find the author who feels that they're writing just for you. I'm very fond of Andrea Barrett. And probably a lot of people don't know who she is, but she did, there are 2 books of hers I especially recommend. One actually won the National Book Award about 15 years ago. It's called Ship Fever. And it's a book of short stories and a long novella. And the novella is called Ship Fever. And it's about an Irish ship that was riddled with typhus that came to Newfoundland. And it's a fictional story about a young doctor in Montreal who's sick of treating gout in rich people and decides he wants to do something good. And he goes, and it's about discovering that just washing your hands can prevent these diseases from spreading. But it's not clinical at all. It's a really beautiful story about a young woman and her little brother, and everyone else in their family dies on the way over, and she and her little brother are there. And then there's another one called Servants of the Map, exactly the same format. It's a bunch of short stories and then a long novella. And this is about a man who's writing home, and he's mapping India from the mountains. This is how they did it. It's just kind of an incredible story. And a lot of the short stories are also a lot of 19th century scientists come in and out of the. She has a degree in sciences, and it really shows. And I think it just makes her fiction so rich. So it's a writer you probably haven't heard of, but I highly, highly recommend her. Just adore her. Thank you. Andrea Barrett.
We have one of the books, we have Ship Fever.
You have Ship Fever here, good. Okay, you won't be sorry.
When
Yes.
did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I think I've always been a writer, honestly. When I was a little girl, my sister Ann was in college, and I used to write letters to her. And I've been writing since I could hold a pencil, honestly. And my sister, she was also my high school English teacher, and kind of the arbiter of all things moral and otherwise, and just the heart and soul of our family, really. And for years, she told me that there was proof of my child prodigy status by these letters that I wrote to her when I was in college. And so for years, I thought I was some, precocious child. And we were going through a cedar chest in the house one day, and I found the letters, and I said, oh my gosh, here it is, the proof. And every letter is exactly the same. Dear Anne, how are you? I am fine. I miss you. I said, are there some other letters that you're referring to? So I say that every writer needs two critics. One who will tell you the absolute truth, and the other who will say, like my sister does, her idea of criticizing my work, although she does catch all the, she saves me from public disgrace of dangling modifiers and such. But her idea of criticism is, well, this line right here isn't quite as pristinely beautiful as the one that precedes it. So everyone needs one of those in their life. Yeah. Yes.
This is about the business of writing. Or
Yes.
When you have your contract with your publisher,
Mm-hmm.
and you have all these translations, do you benefit from that, each of those translations?
I do. Not as much as you would think, but yes. Yeah. It's just like if I had an agreement. Do I benefit from the foreign editions is the question. And it's just like having a contract with an American publisher. But by the time it gets filtered through their income tax, VAT taxes, all it's just, you wouldn't believe it. It's minuscule by the time the writer gets anything, but it's pretty nice to have it.
Was this your first book that was,
I had one novel translated in Italian a long time ago, but this was the first time that I've had a lot of translations. It's been really fabulous. Someone else? Yes.
In the book, did you intend for the reader to not know exactly how the boy dies, whether from a reaction to the drug or just from the disease itself?
Oh, okay. Did I intend for the reader not to know exactly how the boy died, from the disease itself or from the drug that? Yeah. We can't know because they choose not to know, so we can't know. And I didn't think it made a difference one way or the other. And it makes, sort of, without giving really much away, it makes for a nice, an extra layer between Belle and Quinn, because neither of them chooses to be tested. And Quinn chooses not to be tested because he doesn't want to know that he doesn't have it, which means if the boy got it, it would have been through Belle. So nobody's ever asked me that question before. Yes.
There's a scene toward the end where Quinn is doing his shift at the bulk mailing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And his supervisor, with great din of sound, is complaining and goes on a rant about this brochure that
Yes.
looks like
Mm-hmm.
is ripped off from another guy.
Right.
And there's this whole word
Right.
confusion over
Mhm.
this guy,
Yes.
this guy. And
Yes.
it's a moment of realization here
Right.
on that
Mhm.
back scene
Mm-hmm.
with Crosby. Could you expand on that and how, I mean, it's just a brilliant kind of circle and it's.
Yeah, I hate to say too much because if people haven't read it, but there's a pivotal moment for Quinn. I mean, a really pivotal moment where the penny drops. And it depends on a mishearing of a word. It's about how we hear what we need to hear at the time we need to hear it. The most interesting thing about that, honestly, to me, is how the foreigners translated it, because it's two English words that get easily confused. And so I've laboriously gone through, I know where it is in the book, and I've tried to find it in all these different languages, and it's brilliant how they've done it. It has worked so far. But I can't really say that much more about it. Yeah. It's 8 o'clock, so I don't want to keep people over their time, but I can take one more question, sir.
How do your books do in England?
How do my books do in England? They do pretty well in England. I mean, this is the first time through, but
Do you anglicize them? Or-
they did not. I was very surprised. I thought the punctuation is anglicized, but they didn't change any of the words, like color for color. They didn't change any of the spellings. But they actually brought me over last February for a pre-publication week that was so fantastic. They've been very, very good to me, and I love my editor there as well. She's her name is Marion. She calls herself Marion, and they've done a very nice job publishing it.
Do you do better financially in England than you do in Holland and Lithuania?
No, actually, the best financial was Italy and then Germany for some reason. I don't know why.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. I've signed books if you